He left me a funeral and a payment. That's the line I keep replaying in my head. Yesterday, I buried my husband. This morning, my bank buzzed with a deposit. $9,000. From his account. The one that was frozen. Or so I thought. For a full second, I just stared at the screen, like the numbers might apologize. Then the second hit, and the nausea came with it. 9,000. No note, no reason, and right there, under description, final release. Release from what? Or from who? I called the bank. "Ma'am, it's a scheduled transfer," the voice said, "pre-authorized by the account holder 2 weeks ago." 2 weeks ago, he could barely breathe. So how did he find the strength to move money? I asked the woman if she knows the recipient. She says she can't divulge. Company privacy. Company. So it wasn't family. But before we continue, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and write in the comments where you're watching this video from. We love to know how far our stories travel. That's when my heart went loud. The kind of pounding that drowns logic. Because I knew every bill, every debt, every secret. Or maybe I just thought I did. Because that's the moment your memories start to lie. The funeral lilies still sat on the counter, half dead, smelling sweet like guilt. Their pollen clung to my sleeve as I searched through his drawer, insurance papers, hospice notes, and then a key. Small, brass, labeled 316 taped to it, his handwriting, crooked letters, shaky ink. When you see 9, follow the light. I laughed, the brittle kind of laugh that tastes like tears. He always left riddles when he didn't want to say the real thing. But this one felt different. 9. 9,000. Light. He'd hidden something, and he wanted me to find it. The front door creaked. I froze. Just the wind, I told myself. But still, I grabbed his old flashlight from the drawer. Funny, how you reach for light when you don't even believe in angels. I opened the garage. His truck sat there, untouched since the hospice night. The cup holder still held a half-empty coffee, now solid sugar. And beneath the seat, a crumpled receipt, Hollow Oak Storage, Unit 316. Same number. My throat tightened. You know that feeling when grief stops being pain and becomes purpose? That's what walked me into that garage. That's what drove me toward Hollow Oaks. On the road, I kept hearing his last voicemail. "Don't forget the light, Lena. Even if it hurts." I had thought he was talking about hope. Turns out he was giving directions. Halfway there, my mind did what widows' minds do. Rewind, question, torture. Why 9,000? Why not 10? Who was he paying? And why hide it from me? Because people hide guilt, or they hide protection. And I didn't know which one I was about to dig up. The storage lot looked like a place secrets go to age. Rows of rust and padlocks. I signed the log, fingers trembling, pretending I wasn't afraid. The lock clicked open too easily, like it had been waiting for me. Inside, a desk lamp, a folding chair, a banker's box, nothing else. I switched on the lamp. A soft white beam cut through dust and landed on an envelope taped to the wall. On the front, in his handwriting, "For Lena. If you're angry, good. If you're reading this, better." My fingers shook. I slid the envelope free. Inside, a single page, folded twice. You'll find the reason for the 9 at the bottom of the ledger. Don't trust what calls itself help. Bring the key. And for God's sake, don't tell Michael. Michael, our son. That's where the scream died in my throat. The drive back from Hollow Oaks felt longer than grief. Rain tapped the windshield like impatient fingers. The wipers dragged back and forth, metronomes for panic. Every blink of red taillight ahead of me looked like an alarm I couldn't turn off. I kept hearing his voice from the video in my head. Don't trust what calls itself help. And the other line, quieter but sharper. Don't tell Michael. Why would a father warn his wife about their son? The porch light glowed when I pulled in. Michael's car already in the driveway. He was waiting, leaned on the railing, scrolling, pretending to be casual. "Hey, Mom." He smiled, but his eyes didn't. "You holding up?" I lied, because widows are expected to. "I'm fine, just sorting paperwork." He nodded like a man who already knew what papers I meant. "Did the bank call about Dad's insurance? I can handle it if it's too much." There it was, handle. That word had weight now. Daniel used to say, when someone offers to handle everything, check what they're hiding behind the word everything. I forced a laugh. "I'll manage, sweetheart." The smile he gave me was perfect, rehearsed, practiced in mirrors. Then his phone buzzed, and for one raw second I saw his thumb cover the screen too fast. Habit of the guilty. He slipped the phone into his pocket, kissed my cheek, and said he had errands. He left before the rain stopped. When the sound of his engine disappeared, I went straight to Daniel's office. The air still smelled faintly of cedar and coffee. I pulled the banker's box from under the desk, set it on the floor, knelt beside it like a priest opening a coffin. Ledger, flashlight, one yellow sticky note, nothing else. At the very back, scrawled in his handwriting, a single entry, $9,000. Release, MFMF Michael Ferraro, my own son. I whispered it out loud, hoping it would sound less real. It didn't. That's when the grief split open. All the tears I'd been saving turned into something harder. Purpose, maybe. Or revenge in disguise. I said it to the empty room. "If you dragged him into this, Daniel, I'll finish what you started and I'll finish it my way." I didn't sleep that night. I opened every drawer, every file, every memory, insurance, taxes, hospice, retirement. Everything looked clean until I reached the joint account folder. 3 withdrawals, 30 days apart, each for exactly $3,000. Descriptions typed like riddles. Consult A, consult B, final, each authorization, MF. I printed them out, pinned them on the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a heart. Sometimes you have to hang your ghosts where you can see them. At 2 a.m., the house started whispering, the way old houses do when they sense their history being rewritten. Pipes sighed, floorboards flexed, the clock ticked like it wanted attention. I sat at the kitchen table with Daniel's flashlight standing upright like a candle. The brass key beside it caught the beam and glowed faint gold, 316, and his note, "When you see 9, follow the light." Maybe 9 wasn't dollars. Maybe it was days. 9 days from the funeral landed on Friday. What was supposed to happen? Friday. I opened Daniel's laptop. Password prompt. My hands shook hard enough that I had to type slow. Try 1. His birthday. Wrong. Try 2. Mine. Wrong. Try 3. Our anniversary. Wrong again. 4th, 316 light. The screen unlocked. The breath I let out sounded like confession. Inside, one folder named Vault. Inside Vault, one file. Videoed MP4. I pressed play. Daniel appeared on screen. Pale. Thinner. Eyes burning with the kind of calm that only comes from pain turned into purpose. "Lena, if you're watching this, the payment went through. They'll reach you through Michael. Don't blame him. They used him. Gaines & Coers has everything. Bring the ledger, and if someone calls offering help, record it. Truth doesn't scare them. Evidence does." He coughed, smiled the small smile I'd fallen in love with 33 years ago. "You always said I planned too much. Turns out I didn't plan enough." The video ended on his eyes, still open, like he wanted to see my reaction. I replayed it twice. The second time, I noticed his hand tapping the desk in rhythm. 3 quick taps, pause, 1 long, our code for danger. Sunlight crept across the curtains before I realized the night was gone. Outside, birds were screaming their little songs, oblivious. I stared at the paused frame of his face. The words, "Don't tell Michael now," felt heavier, not hateful, protective. Whatever this Gaines & Cohen was, it wasn't another woman. It was something darker. A business deal, maybe, a payoff, a trap. And Daniel had paid $9,000 to buy me a map straight into the fire. I closed the laptop. The house was silent again. No wind, no settling boards, just waiting. I whispered to the empty chair. "Fine, Daniel. You want me to follow the light? I'll burn the whole map if I have to." The flashlight flickered once, as if it agreed. Fade to black. Low cello sting. Morning crept in slow, a weak gray ribbon seeping through the kitchen curtains. The kind of light that belongs to memory, not today. I wrapped my hands around a mug of tea gone cold and stared at the ledger spread across the table. The columns looked like gravestones for numbers. Each one stood where a secret had once been buried. My reflection in the window wasn't mine anymore. It was the woman Daniel used to photograph when we were still learning what promise meant. He would say, "Hold still, Lena. Let the light find you." Funny, after all these years, I was still trying to do that. The smell of his cologne lingered on the hallway scarf, cedar and something like rain. It dragged me backward 33 years. We were newly married then, renting a shoebox apartment over a bakery. Every morning the air smelled like warm sugar and burnt hope. He would leave for the workshop before dawn, always humming, always planning. Daniel was a builder in everything, machines, ideas, futures. I used to joke that he loved blueprints more than breakfast. One morning I found him asleep on the floor, surrounded by sketches. He'd used my favorite sweater as a pillow. When I touched his hair, he woke up grinning. "See this curve here?" he said, pointing to a line on paper. "That's the difference between falling apart and holding forever." Back then I thought he meant the project. Now I know he meant us. We didn't have money. We had promises. When the rent was late, we laughed. When the power cut, we danced by candlelight like fools auditioning for happiness. He'd cut my face and whisper, "When things get dark, we build the light." He always said it like it was a blueprint, not a prayer. I wish I'd written that down. The first crack came years later. Small, polite. He came home late, tie undone, smell of ink and stress clinging to him. Said he'd met a man named Gaines, an investor who could change everything. That night, he didn't eat, just paced the living room, mumbling numbers to himself. When I asked what was wrong, he smiled too easily. "Nothing you need to worry about, Lena. Let me handle it." There it was again. Handle. I should have listened harder. I should have learned then that the word handle often means hide. He started locking his desk drawers. Not out of mistrust, he said, but for organization. I remember the key, brass, small, engraved 316, the same one that now sits on my table. Sometimes foreshadowing isn't writing. It's life rehearsing its lines too early. A month before his diagnosis, we took a weekend trip to the lake. He was already coughing by then, already pretending it was allergies. We sat on the dock, feet in the water, the sunset cutting gold across the ripples. He handed me a pebble, flat and smooth. "Keep it," he said. "For when you need proof, I was real." I laughed, tossed it back into the water. He looked hurt for a moment, then smiled. "It'll find you again," he said. "Things that matter always do." Yesterday, cleaning the car, I found that same pebble wedged under the seat. Tell me in the comments, have you ever replayed a memory and realized it wasn't sweet? It was a warning you ignored? Because that's what nostalgia really is, an echo finally telling you the truth. I remember the last dinner before everything collapsed. Michael had just graduated. Daniel toasted him with cheap champagne and said, "To the future builder of futures." Michael grinned. Then Daniel added, too softly for anyone else to hear, "Just remember who laid the foundation." I thought it was fatherly pride. Now it sounds like a plea. Back in the present, I opened the ledger again. The ink smelled faintly of iron, the way old sorrow smells when you wake it up. Next to the last entry, faint pencil marks I hadn't noticed before. G and C, Project 9, Vault. I traced the words with my thumb. He'd written them lightly, like someone afraid the truth might scream if pressed too hard. Project 9, 9,000, 9 days, 9 everything. I whispered it to the empty kitchen. What were you building, Daniel? The refrigerator hummed an answer I didn't understand. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every object in the house had a memory attached like a tag. The cracked mug, our first fight. The chipped mirror, our first move. The ticking clock, his first apology. Each sound a thread pulling me backward. I opened the cedar chest where we kept photographs, old Polaroids, receipts, postcards from cities we never got to visit. Between two pictures, something slipped free, a folded sheet, yellowed and brittle. My pulse kicked. Daniel's handwriting again. Gaines and Comer meeting. Ask about Fund 9. Trust doc. If they refuse transparency, walk. If they threaten, record. A smear of dried coffee blurred the last word. Record. So he'd been scared. Not reckless, strategic. This wasn't guilt money. It was insurance. I closed the chest and leaned back against the wall. The lamp flickered once, just like it did in the video, and for a heartbeat I thought maybe he was still orchestrating everything from somewhere just out of reach. Because that's the thing about men who build. They never stop constructing, even after death. They leave you riddles shaped like love notes. When the clock struck midnight, I finally understood the rhythm of the story he'd left me. Love had been the first draft, control, the revision, and now revenge, the final chapter. I wiped the dust off the brass key. 316, I whispered. The same number as the unit, the password, the seed, a pattern. And patterns mean intention. Intentions mean truth, waiting to be unearthed. The kettle whistled low, soft like applause. I poured another cup of tea I wouldn't drink and looked at the dark window. My reflection blinked back, tired but certain. All right, Daniel, I said to it. You built the plan. I'll finish the blueprint. The house answered with silence, but it felt like permission. Morning sharpened the sky to a blade. I dressed like I was going to war without saying the word. Pressed coat, low heels, the pearl studs Daniel bought me the year he promised. No more surprises. I tucked the brass key, 316, into my palm, pressed its teeth into my skin until it left little half-moons, proof that I was awake. Gaines & Co. lived in a building that pretended it was church, all pillars and hush. The lobby smelled like varnish and expensive apologies. A receptionist with a white smile and black eyes looked up without looking at me. Appointment? She asked. Tell Mr. Gaines I'm here about Fund 9, I said, as if the phrase were a badge. Her smile twitched, barely, then came back perfect. I'm sorry, that's not a product we offer. Of course it isn't, I said, and this isn't a lobby. Sometimes the only power you have is the sentence that refuses to behave. A man in a slate suit appeared, hair like polished stone. Mrs. Hart? He said my name too easily. I'm Colin. Mr. Gaines asked me to help. Why don't we talk in the conference room? Help. Another word that often means hide. He guided me past glass that reflected our bodies into better versions. The room was all air and angles. He poured water, didn't drink. I was sorry to hear about Daniel, he said, eyes soft with practice. Brilliant man. He thought the same about himself. I slid the ledger across the table, opened to the faint pencil note, G&C, Project 9, Vault. Explain this, I said, and I'll go home quietly. Colin tilted his head, almost admiring. Where did you find that? In a drawer I wasn't supposed to open. Mrs. Hart, he sighed, you have to understand, Daniel was ambitious. He liked games. He pointed to the initials. G&C could be anything. Gaines and Cos, or something he doodled. He didn't doodle with numbers, I said. He built with them. We were silent long enough to hear the climate system breathe. He finally slid the ledger back to me with 2 fingers, careful like it might bite. There is no Fund 9. And even if there were, he added gently, you wouldn't be a signatory. Something in me, something small and stubborn that grew up on cheap tea and hard truths, smiled. That's the second lie you've told, I said. The first was that you were here to help. He flinched so quickly most people would have missed it. I didn't. Years married to a man who spoke in blueprints taught me to read microfractures. I stood, gathered the ledger, and let my chair legs scratch the limestone on purpose. "You've just confirmed it exists," I said. "You wouldn't be this calm if it didn't." His voice cooled. "Mrs. Hart, grief can make patterns out of random dots. Please allow us to manage Daniel's remnants with dignity." "Dignity," I repeated, as if tasting poison to identify it. Out in the hallway, a woman brushed past me so close the perfume felt like a hand. She mouthed a word without sound. "Careful." Then she was gone, swallowed by glass. I rode the elevator down with the brass key printing 3:16 in my palm like a countdown. On the sidewalk, my phone rang. Unknown. "Mrs. Hart," a voice said, female, quick, scraped with cigarettes. "You don't know me. I used to work accounts at Gaines. I can't say more on this line. If you want the truth about 9, be at Harrison Storage, Unit 316 in 1 hour. Bring no one. If you're late, it's over." "Who are you?" "Someone who'd like to sleep again." Click. I stood there with the city moving around me like a machine that never asks permission. The key in my hand warmed as if it had a pulse. 316. The number kept marching across my day like a soldier with a single order. Go. Harrison Storage sat behind a chain-link fence that had seen better metaphors. The clerk barely looked up when I set the key on the counter. "Unit?" he asked. 316, I said. He slid a clipboard forward. "Sign." I hesitated. He raised an eyebrow. "Paper doesn't make it true, ma'am. It just makes it harder to deny." I signed. The corridor smelled like dust and decisions. My footsteps sounded like someone else's, the way sound does when you are doing something you can't undo. Unit 316 waited with a padlock older than the clerk. I fitted the brass key. It turned like it had been practicing. The door rolled up with a sound like a curtain admitting the final act. Inside, neat boxes, a metal chair, and a small safe with a dial. On top of the safe, a note in Daniel's hand. If you're reading this, it means the gentleman in suits remembered too late that I build better than I beg. Lena, breathe. Turn 31. 6:31. My throat closed around his name like it had bones. I sat in the metal chair because my knees didn't trust me and dialed. 31. 6:31. The safe clicked. Obedient. Inside, a phone I'd never seen, a thumb drive wrapped in wax paper, and a legal folder labeled Project 9, for when they pretend they forgot. My hands were steady the way a bridge is steady when wind tests it. I opened the folder. Bank letters, wire confirmations, names like polished weapons, Gaines, Colin, a spreadsheet where the last column said escrow, beneficiary, MH, redacted. Next to it, a handwritten arrow. No, not you, Lena. Different MH. Ask Michael. I whispered the syllables. Ask Michael. My son. The boy who used to build cities out of cereal boxes and call them Heartland. He'd been quiet at the funeral. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that rhymes with complicit. The phone inside the safe vibrated, the screen lighting up with a single message. Unknown. If you found this, leave now. You're being watched. I didn't move. Not because I was brave, because I was angry in the particular way grief forges. White, usable. I pocketed the drive, the phone, and the folder. Then I closed the safe and rolled the door down slow, like a person with nothing to hide. On my way out, I smiled at the security camera. Let them collect my face. I was collecting their sins. Back home, the house felt like a witness sworn in. I placed the drive on the table like a small animal I'd promised to keep alive. I powered up my laptop, hesitated, then remembered Daniel's scribble in the ledger margin. If they threaten, record. Before I opened anything, I launched the recorder app on my phone, set it face down, and called Michael. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey, Mom." "Hey," I said, too light. "Do you know what MH stands for?" Silence, fast and loud. "Should I?" "Maybe not," I said. "Maybe it's just Initials in a spreadsheet your father kept. Maybe it's nothing. I'm probably seeing dots and playing Connect the Ruin." He exhaled. "He told me to expect you'd dig." "That sounds like your father," I said. And he told me not to tell you anything until I got a message. Something about timing is the only weapon polite people have. I haven't gotten it. From who? From him. "Michael, your father is Mom," he said, voice breaking at the edges. "I know, but he scheduled things. Emails, transfers. He said, grief makes people obvious. He said some people would show you their hands if they thought you were holding nothing." I looked at the blank thumb drive like it could hear us. "Who is MH?" He paused long enough to count a life. "Not me," he said. "Promise." "Then who?" "The only other MH Dad cared about," he said softly. "Margaret Hale." The name slid through me like a childhood song I hadn't realized I remembered. "Our neighbor," I whispered. "The widow who used to bring us oranges and warnings. She disappeared last year, sold her house, moved overnight. Rumors said debt had chased her out." "Dad helped her," Michael said. "Said she was prey in a town that likes to pretend it doesn't hunt. He diverted something. I don't know what. He said, sometimes the right theft is a rescue." I sat down slowly, like the room had changed height. Daniel, who loved rules until they broke the wrong people, had been moving money like furniture in a fire. "Mom," Michael added, voice smaller. "There's more. Dad said Gaines would try to erase 9 and pin the dirt on you if you got close. He said if anyone from the firm calls, pretend you're scared. Record everything." "I'm not pretending," I said. "I know," he whispered. We hung up. I pressed stop on the recorder. The file saved with a little chime, cheerful and obscene. The laptop chimed too. New email, subject line empty. Sender, Daniel. Heart-deferred mail. My breath snagged. I clicked. "If they called you emotional, congratulations. You're over the target. Open the drive, play the video labeled Boardroom. Send a copy to the address in Margaret. And Lena? Don't go to Gaines again. Make them come to you. Paper wants light. D." My fingers stopped being hands and became instruments. I inserted the drive. A single folder bloomed. 9 proof. Inside 3 files. Boardroom MP4 wiretrail.csv Margaret. I opened the text file first. Deliver encrypted link to M. Hale. She's safe. She knows which reporter still cares about the truth. Phrase, "The pebble always returns." The pebble. The lake. The man who hid keys inside memories. I clicked boardroom.mp4 and the room filled with expensive audio, polished voices, clink of glass, the kind of laughter that lives on expense accounts. The camera, hidden high, showed Gaines, Colin, and 2 others I didn't know. "Move the assets into 9 temporarily," Gaines was saying, bored as a god. "By the time the widow notices, we've converted and she has no standing." "Are we worried about the son?" Colin asked. Gaines sipped his drink. "Sons are predictable. Wives are sentimental. Sentiment is a ledger with no math." The video kept going, each sentence a brick on a road that ended at a prison gate. I didn't watch it all. I didn't need to. The first 30 seconds would do the work when light hit them. My phone rang again. Unknown. I hit speaker, tapped record. "Mrs. Hart?" "Colin." Softer now. The silk frayed. "I hope you got home safely. I've been thinking, perhaps there is a small account. Your husband opened, we could close for you. To help with expenses." "There is a small account," I said. $9,000. He inhaled like the word had punched him. "Where did you—" "I'd like to meet," I said. "On my terms. Tomorrow, noon, St. Gabriel's, the public garden, lots of light. Bring Mr. Gaines." "That's not how we—" "It is today," I said, and hung up. I sent boardroom.mp4 to the address in Margaret TXT, added a single line in the email body. "The pebble always returns." Within a minute, a reply arrived. No words, just a thumbs-up emoji and a pin drop of a newsroom address. I leaned back, the ceiling fan tracing circles like a jury deliberating. The first spark of revenge had caught. A small, precise burn where paper meets air. "All right, Daniel," I said, into the room he'd rigged with posthumous strings. "You built the light. I'll hold it steady." The next day, the sky was too clean, the kind of blue that looks paid for. St. Gabriel's Garden shimmered with tourists, mothers, pigeons, the perfect stage for men who hate witnesses. I arrived early, sat on a bench under the Iron Angel statue, phone in my purse recording, camera pinned in my brooch streaming to the same cloud Daniel once called our parachute. He'd coded the upload trigger. If silence lasted more than 40 seconds, the file went live. Smart man. The fountain hissed beside me, steady like a countdown. At 11:59, two shadows lengthened across the gravel, Gaines and Colin, suits and sunlight, predators wearing reflection as camouflage. "Mrs. Hart," Gaines said, voice syrup and blade, "you requested a meeting." "I requested sunlight," I answered. "You brought it." Colin's smile was thin enough to cut paper. "You look tired." "I bury well," I said. "Let's talk business." Gaines clasped his hands behind his back, performing humility. "I understand Daniel left some confusing paperwork." "He left evidence," I corrected. Colin tilted his head. "Evidence of what exactly?" "Fraud, money laundering, whatever fancy word you people use when stealing with pen instead of knife." I slipped a flash drive onto the bench between us. "This is a copy of the boardroom video. You've got until sunset before it lights up the world." For the first time, Gaines blinked too long. He recovered, but the crack was there. Small, bright. "Mrs. Hart, grief distorts perception. You don't want to turn a misunderstanding into a scandal." "Then explain why my husband filmed you planning it." A mother pushed a stroller past us. A child laughed. That's what truth sounds like sometimes. Innocent, unaware it's surrounded by wolves. Gaines adjusted his cufflinks. "Your husband was a partner. He profited as much as anyone. We can ensure you keep the estate if this material stays private." There it was, the bribe disguised as condolence. "How generous," I said. "Buying silence with the same money you stole. Recycling guilt is good business, I hear." Colin's voice lowered. "You're not thinking straight. You're alone, vulnerable." "I'm recorded," I said. "Every word. Smile for the cloud." He glanced upward instinctively. Beautiful reflex. My phone buzzed. Signal from Margaret Hale's contact. Live. The reporter had published. Headlines were already climbing feeds. "Investment firm tied to Fund 9 scandal." Gaines' own phone vibrated. He checked it, and for a fraction of a second, the world saw a king realize the peasants had torches. "Mrs. Hart," he said softly, "do you know what happens when reputation collapses? It drags everyone it ever paid." "I'm not afraid of falling," I said. "I was married to a man who built bridges from the wreckage." He leaned close enough that I could smell cologne hiding stress. "We can still fix this. Delete the file, and you walk away with comfort." I smiled the way widows aren't supposed to. "I'm comfortable already. Guilt burns warm." Colin's hand twitched toward his pocket. I knew the posture. Threat, not weapon, but close. I stood before he could. The recorder in my purse caught everything. The tremor in his breath, the scrape of his shoe, the hiss of panic under polish. "You shouldn't have come alone," he said. "I didn't," I replied. 2 park officers stepped into view. Margaret walked with them, phone in hand, badge on a lanyard. Retired accounts clerk turned whistle-blown saint. "Gentlemen," she said, "I'd keep those hands visible. The lady has a broadcast audience." Gaines froze mid-sentence. The smile curdled. Colin exhaled defeat. For the first time, I believed in justice that doesn't wear a robe. The officers took statements. People started filming. Sunlight did its slow applause across their suits. Gaines tried one last script. These files are fabricated, malicious editing. Tell it to the timestamp, Margaret said. Digital doesn't lie as easily as men. I watched the moment their certainty dissolved, their posture sagged, ties suddenly too tight. And in that unraveling, I saw Daniel's plan complete. He hadn't built revenge. He'd built exposure. When the officers led them away, Colin turned once. "You think you've won," he said. "No," I answered. "Daniel did." The garden returned to ordinary. Children chasing pigeons, water hissing in rhythm. Margaret stood beside me. "You could have sold the evidence," she said, "bought peace." "Peace isn't for sale," I said. "Not the kind Daniel wanted." She nodded. "He said you'd be the light." I laughed, tired. He always overestimated me. "No," she said. "He just planned more than his death." I looked toward the angel statue, wings rusted but still open. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of cedar, the ghost of his cologne. By afternoon, the garden had emptied from my pulse, but not from my hands. I washed the coffee cup twice anyway, scrubbing at a stain that wasn't there. The house held that funeral silence again, the kind that makes you tiptoe in your own life. I was deciding whether to sleep or pretend to when my phone chimed. Deposit $9,000. Memo line for the month after. It wasn't a pension payout, not insurance, not anything that belonged to the arithmetic of grief. Just 9 clean thousands marching into my account like soldiers with no country. I stared until the numbers blurred. Then I called the bank. "Originating institution?" I asked. "Union Maritime Credit," the rep said. "And there's a reference code." Paper rustled. B17, Gate, Rowan. Does that mean anything to you? It didn't. It did. Rowan was Daniel's word for go now. He used it when servers overheated or when storms were faster than forecasts. "Thank you," I said, already reaching for my keys. Union Maritime Credit looked like it wanted to be a lighthouse. White stone, brass railings, an old bell displayed with a plaque no one read. The manager recognized my name and his face softened. The sympathy people keep ready for widows like tissues in jacket pockets. "There's a box here," he said. "Not in your name, but you're the listed agent posthumous." He slid a form across the counter. My hand didn't shake until the pen touched paper. Vaults always feel colder than money deserves. The manager lifted a small steel drawer, B17, and set it on a table like contraband. Inside, a black envelope, a brass key, a single USB, and a folded receipt for a storage unit on Rowan Street. Daniel never did metaphors halfway. The envelope held a note in his neat, stubborn handwriting. "If you're reading this, sunlight worked, but timing will try to cheat you. 9,000 is for the month after the funeral. Don't spend it. Follow the key." My mouth formed the word, "why" without sound. The USB felt heavier than data should. "Do you have a private room?" I asked the manager. He led me to a glass-walled cubicle that pretended to be privacy. I plugged the USB into my laptop anyway. The screen went black, then lit with Daniel's face, alive in pixels, wearing the sweater he used when the world had sharp edges. "Hey, bird," he said. His voice reached me like warm hands. "If I've timed this right, you've already made them show their teeth in daylight." I pressed my palm against the screen. I didn't cry. The room cried around me. Quiet, air vents humming grief. "I needed you to win without asking you to fight," he continued. "I also need you to leave the house for one night. The storage unit on Rowan holds a packet you can't copy. If you stay home, they'll come to serve papers at midnight, and if that fails, them being broke will make them brave." He paused, as if he could see me frowning. "I didn't plan my death," he said. "I planned your after." Rowan Street smelled like old rain and rubber. Unit 24 took the brass key like it had been waiting its whole life for the turn. Inside, a gray Pelican case, a wool blanket, and an old camping lantern, Daniel's version of a care package. When I popped the case, my future clicked open. On top sat a smaller black binder stamped F9 Orphans. Under it, a prepaid phone labeled One Call Only, Hail. And beneath everything, a red folder marked Do Not Burn. He knew me too well. I opened the binder first, bank statements, wire maps, and then, like a bruise beneath makeup, the list. 36 names, ages next to them, all between 8 and 15. A note in Daniel's hand. Beneficiary roll. Parent deceased in F9 trials. I had to sit on the concrete. The cold traveled through me, careful and complete. Fund 9 hadn't just been a tax dodge. Gaines and Collin had built its gloss over a pit. Experimental pediatric oncology. Trials that never met protocol. Parents who'd signed hope and found invoices. The trial was a shell to bill insurance, launder investor losses, and buy champagne with money that should have bought morphine. Daniel's next sticky note. I diverted 1.5% of every dirty flow into a ring-fenced account. It pays stipends to the 36 quietly. If F9 collapses wrong, the kids lose it all in the freeze. That's why he hadn't torched them publicly sooner. He'd been threading a needle I couldn't even see, expose the men without stopping the money that kept children in shoes. The phone buzzed in my hand like it remembered its task. I pressed Hail. Hail, a woman answered. Clean voice, sleep in it, steel under it. This is Eleanor Hart, I said. Daniel told me to call. Silence, then a small exhale that sounded like relief that hurt. He made it to you. Good, listen carefully. The video you released is the first cut. The second cut is in that red folder, names included. That one we don't publish. Not yet. Because of the children, I said. Because of the children, she echoed. You give me 48 hours. We've coordinated a federal seizure that freezes executive accounts and leaves the ring-fence stipends alone. If you go wide now, the machine panics and grabs everything with claws, including those 36. The numbers on my phone display blurred the way grief blurs days. Why the 9,000? I asked. For the month after, she said. Gaines' team hired private muscle out of pocket. When the public angle failed, they planned to make you look unstable. Scare, not harm. Enough to smear your credibility before the hearing. Security and relocation for 30 days if you need it. I looked at the wool blanket, the lantern, the care Daniel had tucked into a steel box. He'd planned my courage and my safety like parallel lines. I can stay put, I said. I have neighbors with loud opinions. That works too, Hale said. But leave the house tonight. Let them serve air. We'll be ready when they come back with cameras. The call clicked off. The phone went inert. Mission completed. I held the red folder like a live thing. I didn't open it. Not yet. I booked a room at the Rail House Inn, old brick, no nonsense, and left the porch light on at home like a decoy. At 11:57 p.m., my neighbor, Miss Rose, texted a photo. 2 men at my door, papers in hand, a third with a camera tilted just so. They pounded, filmed, left a notice. I told them you were at choir. Miss Rose doesn't go to choir. She invents choirs when required. At 12:09, a new headline crawled across my screen. Widow refuses to accept husband's role, harasses former colleagues, evades legal service. Attached, a grainy still of my empty porch, captioned like a conviction. The smear tasted familiar. Cheap ink and arrogance. I didn't panic. I opened the Pelican case again and pulled a second USB from a foam slot I hadn't noticed. Label, Garden Mic, Ambient. Daniel had captured not just our words earlier, but the crowd's phones, cross-referenced with timestamps, angles, faces. A mesh of truth they couldn't unweave. I sent it to Margaret, who sent it to Hale, who sent back one word, airstrike. I finally opened the red folder. A passport photo of a boy with a chipped tooth, an invoice for trial admission fees. A mother's handwritten note. He keeps asking if the medicine will make him love math again. On the last page, Daniel's letter, ink steady, edges worn like he'd folded it 100 times before he believed the words. Bird, if I fall, they will say I jumped. If I speak, they will say I lied. If I stay, they will fold you into the oath that drowns men who know too much. So I learned a better language, math and sunlight. The math protects the 36. The sunlight protects you. 9,000 is not hush. It is armor. If you need more, call Hale and say the word Rowan. She'll move you like weather. You asked once if I believed in angels. I said no because I had you. But there's a statue in that garden I walked past 1,000 times without looking. Today I looked. The wings aren't pretty. They're iron and rust and bolts. They don't lift, they shield. Be that. For them. For you. For the month after, and the ones after that. I set the letter down and let the quiet land. Outside my hotel window, the tracks moaned, freight moving through darkness, steady, unphotographable. My phone lit again. Hale. 48 hours, she said. Then we go for the spine, not the skin. Your garden clip bought us credibility. The ambient audio buys us teeth. What do you need from me? Tomorrow you'll get a summons to appear on a morning show. You'll decline. Then you'll post one paragraph on your site. We will not sell shame as narrative. Children are not brand equity. We'll speak in court. That line will drive them insane. Good. I smiled without meaning to. Daniel's tactics wearing a new voice. One more thing, Hale added, her tone softening. Gaines wasn't the top. There's a fund of funds above F9, Harbor 13. If we seize without proof of harm to minors, they'll buy a judge in an hour. The red folder is our human spine. Keep it safe. Keep yourself safer. The call ended. I laid the wool blanket across the bed and slid Daniel's letter beneath my pillow like a relic. Grief didn't recede. It rearranged. It moved from a weight on my chest to a weight in my hands. Tools weigh less when you know how to use them. I turned off the lamp. In the dark, I could still see his handwriting where the letters curved into the word armor. The month after had begun. The morning after the call from Hale, the world pretended nothing had happened. Cars hummed. Birds negotiated the same power lines. But I could feel the countdown ticking in my wrists. 48 hours until the hearing. I brewed tea and watched the steam curl like breath, leaving a secret. On my laptop, headlines swarmed, F9 collapse imminent, whistleblower widow behind data leak. They called me a whistleblower because widow sells pity and war strategist doesn't fit a 60-year-old in a cardigan. Margaret texted, they're deleting servers. Hale says, hold position. Tonight, 0001, we pull trigger F-gate. F-gate, Daniel's final firewall, code nested inside the firm's accounting API. Once Hale's warrant connected, it would unlock everything. But to execute, it needed a human login from the original partner list. There was only one left alive. Me. At 10 a.m., the courier arrived. Plain envelope. Inside, an access fob engraved Mason, primary. I recognized the etch, Daniel's hand. He had forged my credentials into the system before his death, expecting this hour. Hale called at noon. You'll need to log in from their HQ. Remote pings will get flagged. In person? I asked. Yes. The press will be there tomorrow for the board hearing. Perfect cover. She paused. Once you enter that code, every transaction unfolds. There's no undo. The kids lose stipends for a week, then gain freedom forever. You'll lose your quiet forever. I buried quiet with him, I said. The next morning, the HQ on Belmont looked like a temple built for arrogance. Glass so clear it believed in its own purity. Reporters clustered like gnats around sugar. Inside, the board sat in rows. Gaines absent, calling out on bail. Their lawyers whispered into phones that were already betraying them. Mrs. Hart, the chair said, voice public relations warm, we're sorry for your loss. I tapped the fob against the console. The screen blinked awake, asking for a partner password. Rowan. Enter. For a moment, nothing. Then the room's lights flickered like shutters taking pictures of guilt. On every monitor, balances began to move, funds bleeding into frozen government ledgers. Someone shouted, "What did you do?" I looked up. "Math and sunlight." Security rushed in too late. The system was eating its own heart. Outside, sirens answered the upload's ping. Federal vehicles in convoy, black and steady. I walked out through the front doors as alarms screamed behind me. Cameras found my face. I didn't hide. Let them film a woman doing what her husband started. By the time I reached the street, news feeds were already mirroring the collapse. Federal seizure of Fund 9 assets. Board members detained. A reporter yelled, "Mrs. Hart, is this revenge?" I stopped, looked straight into his lens. "This is arithmetic," I said. "Every debt comes due." The quote trended within minutes. An arithmetic of grace. People love justice when it wears a mourning dress. Margaret called from the crowd. "They're finished." "No," I said, watching the building's logo flicker off the marble. "They're remembered." That night, the city smelled of ozone and newsprint. I sat by the window of the Railhouse Inn, watching rain trace the glass like fingerprints. Margaret brought a sealed envelope left at the front desk by a messenger with green eyes. Inside, one photo, Daniel standing in that public garden, head tilted toward the Iron Angel. On the back he'd written, "If you're reading this, you did what I couldn't. Don't apologize for being right too late." Under it, a smudge of ink like a thumbprint. Proof he had been alive long enough to plan everything but long enough to trust me with the end. I placed the photo beside the $9,000 deposit notice printout. The sum had become a symbol now, payment for 1 month of becoming someone new. At exactly midnight, my phone buzzed. Hale again. "It's done," she said. "Harbor 13's offshore nodes went dark 10 minutes ago. We followed the trail to a holding account in Zurich, one Daniel set up as a failsafe. You just bought 36 children a future." "And the others?" I asked. "Gaines will spend his life explaining numbers he can't erase. Colin's already talking. They'll feed on each other now." I looked out at the city. Every window was a screen. Every screen was a mirror. "Daniel said angels don't fly," I whispered. "They shield." "Then you're one with iron wings," Hale said. When the line went dead, I took the red folder, walked to the sink, and set fire to it. Pages curled like old sins. The ink bled names I would never need to say again. The flames reflected in the window looked like a halo I didn't deserve. So that's how it ended. Not with a court verdict, but with smoke that smelled like freedom and forgiveness fighting for space. If you've ever been underestimated, remember this. Silence is not peace. It's just a blade waiting for air. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe. Tell me in the comments if you've ever chosen truth over comfort. Because sometimes the only way to honor the dead is to make the living afraid again.